Hello, Earthlings, and welcome back to Progress America Unfiltered. This is Rhett here with JOCELYN and Tyler to talk a little bit about what is going on with the aliens. We are hearing a little bit about aliens coming to Earth in the United States Congress, and this would normally be like blockbuster level news, but as we've kind of heard time and time again on social media, like everybody is way too overwhelmed right now to like even like pay second thought to that. It's like, okay, I understand that there might be aliens here, but like, let me go see the Barbie movie. Let me go see Oppenheimer. And we are going to cover those topics later this week. But for right now, we are going to dive into what is going on with the aliens. And so I'm going to kick it over to JOCELYN. JOCELYN, why do you think it is that, one, that this is such a hot story, but two, why is it that people have gotten so kind of apathetic to the fact that there literally might be aliens among us?
I think that what we're talking about right now is literally why this show exists. Because TikTok and the internet is just generally on fire with these hilarious memes of people being like, oh, there are aliens? Great. It's $3,000 to rent a 2-bedroom. I don't care. And I think this specifically, like, oh, there might be UFOs, like there might be other life out there, is just representative of the extreme disconnect between what ordinary people care about and what our mediascape is feeding us. Like, we don't care about UFOs. We're limited to how much we care about. Like, there's a lot of really groundbreaking, scary stuff happening on the foreign policy front, but frankly, people are too oversaturated and overwhelmed to care. And I think there is a growing frustration that nobody's covering the fact that, like, working class, middle class, even upper middle class people are struggling to get their basic needs met in this country. And that should be the story.
Absolutely. And like we have a Republican Party in the House of Representatives that is like holding these hearings to like try to, get to the bottom or at least put on like a media circus about the possibility of there being like extraterrestrial life. And like a question is like, like if there were extraterrestrials, like are they going to be like good or bad to like humankind here on Earth? And it's just like, well, it's just like define what like bad would be, like, because I understand bad in terms of like the violence that like could ensue, and this is me just like kind of thinking about it in like a broader scale, but like also like, are the extraterrestrials going to come here and try to take healthcare away from seniors? Like, because that's also bad. Like, what do they define as bad? And like all of these things when they're trying to do all these awful things in the House of Representatives right now. Certainly extraterrestrials would not have the ability to do the things that Republicans are trying to do right now in the House. But Tyler, what are your takes on what is going on with the possibility of UFOs, everything, the reaction towards them, and all that jazz?
So I think one of the important things about all of this to remember is that, while these claims are kind of unsubstantiated, like we have some proof, but again, it's not like we've seen like little green men running around. So I think that's also a reason why people aren't taking this as seriously, because we don't have unequivocal proof. We just kind of have first person testimonies, which who cares? And then I think the second thing too, which I've been seeing a lot of on TikTok and I have started to do my own research into, is the fact that there is actually a trend in United States history of when there are upticks in UFO sightings or alien sightings or just alien rhetoric in general, it often coincides with Cold War activities in the United States, ramping up Cold War activities and, military expenditures and defense things. So, it's like, oh, that crazy spaceship you see in the sky. Yeah, that's just a UFO. That's definitely not some like super dangerous, like high tech military grade weapon meant to spy on other countries or coming from other countries to spy on us. So yeah, I think that's also super important to keep in mind. Let's think about things that are going on in the world right now. We're in another semi-Cold War with Russia and China. We just had the Chinese air balloon in our airspace, like a month ago or 2 months ago, we were talking about this. And now who knows what we're doing in retaliation. And by the way, maybe there's aliens. So I think that's also important to keep in mind during all of this, that, the reasons why we might be hearing about it now and why I think the media wants us to be talking about it now might not be what we think they are.
Yeah, I think it's certainly a good like distraction technique. And JOCELYN, what were you going to say?
Oh no, I love that, Tyler, and I think it's so true. It's a tale as old as empire itself, right? When there is some powerful force And in this case in history, it's this class of very rich people who do want to distract us from labor exploitation, the climate crisis, the housing crisis, the fact that they've seized all of our resources and are preventing even the most privileged in the middle classes from rising up into a livable state of calm. They want there to be something else for us to think about. And sometimes it's religion, sometimes it's aliens. I guess religion has gone out of vogue lately, but actually maybe not, thanks to the right wing of the Republican Party.
Yeah, that is a really great point. And I think, so JOCELYN, something we were going to talk about today on the show too is just kind of what is this growing movement within the Republican Party as they push further right in the United States. So we talk about how UFOs, how extraterrestrial life like is such a great distraction technique. But what do you think this is a distraction from? Like, what is this rallying cry of the Republican Party today as they push further to the right?
Well, I think that we as people who are anti-fascists can never underestimate the psychological pull to giving one person all of your power. It's something very human, and it's something that a lot of people in this country and across the world want. They love the idea that they can be ruled by like strongman candidates like Trump, like, I don't need to list fascist on this show. This video will get flagged, but we know who they are. You give them all their power and trust that they will protect you because you are the chosen race, you are the chosen nationality, and that is something that can be very comforting for people in times of extreme anxiety, like the ones we're living through. When we're overwhelmed by all of these things that are just more difficult than they've been in generations, like finding a place to live, finding a way to educate your children, it's really comforting to just give your power away to someone who can handle it all for you and protect you from the perceived dangers of like the others, which depending where you live, in Germany in the 1930s, it was the Jews. Here, it's pretty much everyone who isn't white. It really doesn't matter what the privileged class and what the marginalized class is or looks like. It's just the same pattern of pitting us against each other to give that one elite class all of the power.
Absolutely. And I also want to flag again, like, it's still giving a lot of Cold War similarities, in my opinion, in terms of the stratification of us versus them, protecting a certain way of life. So in the same way that it's like, I think all of this UFO nonsense is like a way to distract from a lot of the Cold War weaponry and the potential for that. I also think that that's a similar thing that we're seeing in the rise of right-wing fascism and nationalism and the us versus them. This time the them is, people who are woke, leftist, liberals, whatever you want to call us. And it's that idea of like, we are the direct threat to the same way of life. And in the same way that we had like the witch trials of people being called communists and the whole Red Scare, it's like we're totally seeing that to a certain extent. But I think that a lot of people are a lot more educated now. And I think that viewpoint is a lot less popular than maybe it was back in the day. But I do think there's just a lot of parallels, which are hard for me to ignore.
Yeah, as you both kind of mentioned, it's like that very much history is kind of circular thing, right? Unless we like right the wrongs of the past or like try to rectify the lessons that were like very much not learned, that it's kind of like doomed to repeat itself. So JOCELYN, I know you spent a lot of time in Europe recently, and not even just recently. I know you hop over there a lot. And I always think it's so fascinating when you come back and you have the stories to tell from people you talk with over there. And you always kind of refer it back to this like kind of idea of like what is the history of Europe? Like, how can that inform like the history that like the United States is continuing to carve for itself? Like, what kind of guardrails do there need to be? And all of that. Like, I just think it's such a fascinating thing that you always like to share with us. So do you have any lessons from your research?
Yeah, I think that, and again, like Europe is having its own problems with fascist movements, but Europeans have a living memory of the scars of fascism in a way that Americans I think are in denial about our white supremacist history, about our relationship with fascist movements. And where, you talk to, so I was in Greece recently and they're having a lot of fascist political movements rise to power. And I was talking to some of my Greek friends and they were like, yeah, it's really awkward for us because our parents were leftists who were imprisoned for that, like literally one generation ago. And they just have, I think, a consciousness that we can put ourselves in denial about the fact that like fascism isn't just like some weird internet dude saying wild stuff. It's a very real thing that happens where these people come into power. They put marginalized people either into a state of economic distress or literal prisons and pogroms and genocides. And it happens. It happens all over the world. And I think the struggle that we in America are going to continue to have is our fascism is primarily economic. You look at the history of marginalized groups in this country, and the violence against them was predominantly economic, which in a capitalist country makes it easy to gaslight those, oh, like, yeah, well, if they just work harder and went to college, that's not true. We know that's not true. The reason that there is such a gap between Black and white Americans is because of redlining. It's because of student debt. It's because of, like, we in America do not have the hypervigilance that Europeans have, that power can rush to the top. And when it does that, it leaves the rest of us incredibly vulnerable.
JOCELYN, thank you for that insight, for sure. I definitely think that, you know, there's so much to be learned like from recent history as well. And like, as you mentioned, that like kind of living, breathing history, it's a really important thing. And I think that's kind of also ties into like the general theme of like what we're trying to pick up on this show too, is that like, unless we're like very scrupulous with what is happening like in current events and like looking for those references to like recent history, kind of not so recent history even, there is that kind of like doom to repeat itself. Like humans are capable of falling into these patterns that like are so destructive, so scary. And governments certainly are not protected enough from letting themselves fall into things such as fascism, as you mentioned. Tyler, is there anything that that JOCELYN was mentioning, just like kind of about like her trip to Europe, anything like that? I know you were recently over there too. That you'd want to. I guess I'm the only one not going to Europe.
Summer.
Yeah, exactly. I'm ready. Tyler, is there anything that you kind of wanted to flag before we close out the show today?
I just think that, yes, yeah, I was just in Europe too. But I also think, if anything, I learned that we have to stop thinking about things in such a separation. This is like maybe me getting a little woo woo, but that's just who I am, so I don't care. But like, so often we think about things linearly. Okay, well, that was the past, so it doesn't matter now. Or we think about things geographically. Well, that's happening there. How does that affect me? But the truth is, everything is connected, like as simple and as complicated as that is. So it does matter if far right people are coming into power on the other side of the world, because that will have implications for us. Similarly, it does matter if we re-elect someone like Trump, because that will have implications for the rest of the world, even countries that, you know, are strongholds of democracy. Similarly, what happens in the past, what happened in the 50s, what happened before then, is extremely important and informative to what's going on now. So I think my biggest takeaway is, yeah, it's important to pay attention to in every sense. And, you know, it takes a lot of, again, woo-woo understanding that we are not a monolith. We are not as separated as we think we are. And so, you know, we need to care about all of it, which I know is hard, but it's kind of what we have to do.
I love that, Tyler. And just one more thing before we close out. Like, you know, when we're talking about the history of fascism, one of the uncomfortable things, I know I've said this on here before, is as Americans, we watch these World War II movies where it's like the Allies come in and like everybody like staggers out of the camps and there's this like dark romance of resolution. That isn't what happened. Like the fascist movements in Europe killed off an entire generation of leftist organizers and Jewish people and marginalized people of all groups, permanently reshaping the face of the globe. Like to this day, Jewish populations have not recovered from that. And the fascists that lived were very commonly reinstated in their previous government posts, returned to their government pension, returned to their lives. So we love the idea of the happy ending that just organically happens. That's not true. The happy ending happens when we force it to, when we keep these people from either getting power or coming back to power. And that's the ugly truth that we don't like to talk about, because how much more fun if like good just happens to conquer? It doesn't. And then those people have kids and grandkids, and those kids become the fascists we see now. Italy's fascist leader is quoted as like admiring Mussolini. The past is never past. And I love that you said that, Tyler. It's something we have to take an active ownership of.
Thank you both so much. That is such an important call to organize. And, I always love having these conversations with you two because we can take something like talking about extraterrestrials and tie it into very real problems that are impacting people across the globe. Where else on the internet are you going to find a conversation that can turn that topic into a topic like this so effectively and so seamlessly? JOCELYN and Tyler, that was truly a fabulous conversation to watch. Thank you for letting me be a part of it. And thank you all at home for watching this episode of Progress America Unfiltered. Make sure you like, share, and put your comments down below. We want to read them. We will see you very soon. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.